Well, good morning, my friends. Let us begin, as always, by taking a few deep breaths together. So, if you will, exhale first. Take another deep breath in. And let go. Another deep breath. And let go. Another deep breath in. And so here we are, once again. It's hard to believe that we are moving so rapidly through January. It's like 2020 just started. It's been a long year, right? So here we are, and this year, in 2022, we are exploring our year's theme of inner and outer permaculture. And over the 12 months of the year, we're exploring the 12 principles of regenerative agriculture, also known as permaculture. And this month, our theme has been the first principle, which is observe and interact. And all month long, we've been talking about this idea of observation and interaction as a necessary duo. And we've been looking at this from different levels. And so the first week of the month, if you remember, we talked about the metaphor of the body and the body of the earth, and how that which shows up, if we are looking, if we are observing, can give us messages of how we need to interact and change moving forward. And then we began to look at how we need to observe the identities and the stories that we tell about ourselves in our minds. And then we started talking about the bigger pictures, about how we observe and interact with some of the social issues and the confusion that's happening in the world. And this week we want to bring that idea of observe and interact up to a little bit of a higher level. That this week we want to look at it from the spiritual, from the interconnected, from the integral perspective. And, in science of mind, it's kind of the basis of our philosophy, that we have this statement that says you can change your thinking, which will change your life, right? Change your thinking, change your life. That's the base of this philosophy. But as Reverend Grace has told us many times, first we have to observe that and what we're thinking, right? And then that interaction piece is, we can't just change our thinking, change our life. We have to observe our thinking, then change our thinking, then change some behaviors, then change some patterns, then change some other thinking, and then eventually our life changes, right? It's not just a 1-2 step. There's multiple iterations of this process involved. And we know from this philosophy that tells us that what we think about comes about. What we focus on grows. What we appreciate appreciates, right? We've all heard these things before. So it's the act of observation that then dictates what the interaction might be. And we live in this remarkable age where we have the emergence of this fabulous field of science called quantum physics. And in this idea of observe and interact, quantum physics tells us that mere observation is interaction. That it is the observer's observation that chooses where reality will be. That wherever you look, there it will be. Right? And we have this philosophy that, and the underlying message underneath all of this is that there's only one of us here. That spirit is the source, the substance, and the supply of absolutely everything. And any great mystic, any spiritual teacher, anyone who's actually met God will tell you God is love. God is love. If anyone comes to you and says, God told me to tell you, and they have any message other than God is love, don't trust them. Spiritual practice is, I think, the most necessary thing for all of us in the emerging world. Many of you know that I come to spirituality. I have a long, fantastic journey, which some of you have heard, but I came to spirituality out of a mental health crisis 20-something years ago. And at some point, coming from suicidal and depressive, I figured out that spiritual practice was a mental health necessity, that spiritual practice was an absolute imperative, that if I wanted to survive, I had to dedicate myself to observing something deeper than what is showing up in my mind often and what is showing up in the circumstances, the affairs of our lives and our world. Because it's really easy for us to get lost in the stories we tell about ourselves or others. It's really easy to get lost in our pain, in the struggle, in the oppression, in the problems, in the breakdown of the environment. There's plenty of stuff to look at. There's lots of things to observe that need to be fixed. There's lots of things to look at that need to be changed. And yet, there is something that I think is always calling all of our attention to observe something a little bit deeper. That practices like meditation are about stopping in the present moment and observing the now, observing your breath, observing your thoughts, but passively, and allowing them to flow, allowing them to move, allowing them to be present. And that during the course of that observation, the opportunity arises for us to notice that there's something else there for us to experience, something else there for us to observe. And that something is the true nature of reality. That something is God itself. That something is the source of all things. And so we can look out at the world and we can observe all the things that need our attention, and that's important. But unless we're willing to observe the internal, the deeper, and the true, I don't think that we can actually see our way through the problems. Because as we've all heard the quote attributed to Einstein, you can't solve the problem at the level of problem. So the more we observe the more we look at the problems, the more that is what spirals around in our brain. My sister's a therapist, and she told me the other day, did you know that your brain cannot process anxiety and gratitude at the same time? Your brain can also not process fear and love at the same time. And so if we want to be able to see into the solutions that are in front of us, if we want to see our way out of the knots that we're tied up in, we have to take our attention away from the fear and the anxiety. And we have to turn that attention to love and gratitude. Because when we do, it opens something deeper in us. Because we know that fear and anxiety hijack our brain, and they bring us down into that almost reptilian reactive place where we can't actually think logically. And yet things like gratitude and love and appreciation activate the high frontal parts of our brain where some of our deepest complex thinking can happen. And there's plenty in the world currently to hijack our attention. And I do believe in the power of our collective consciousness. And that whatever we are focusing on as a collective is what we are growing. Right? Whatever we give our attention to, we're going to get more of. Whatever we look for, we're going to see. And I don't want to say that spiritual practice and looking for love is the only way through all of this, because we have to balance it. We have to look at what is. We have to look at the issues. We have to acknowledge what's not working. That's the observe your thinking part. It's not just our thinking, it's our collective thinking. We have to see all that's unfolding around us. But we have to balance that. Because if we only focus on the problems, what happens? It just gets heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier. We get angry, we get anxious, and we don't know what to do. And if we want to see our way through what's coming, if we want to see our way through our struggles, we have to find and realize that if there are tools available to us to lift our mind to another place where we can see and remember something else. And Science of Mind, our buddy Ernest Holmes, has given us a fabulous recipe of how to observe and interact in a way that lifts our mind to the level of solution. And do you know what that practice is? Spiritual mind treatment. Heard a few people say that. And that is in Centers for Spiritual Living, our 5-step prayer. And the thing that I love about this is that it's basically a stencil. It's an outline, it's a recipe, and then you get to fill it in. But it's a mental process of walking our mind through logical conclusions that bring us to a place of deeper understanding. And so I want you to close your eyes for a moment. And think of something in the world or in your own life that you are observing. Could be good or bad. Just think of that thing and keep it in mind for a moment. And now I want you to think for a moment. What is it that you believe about the nature of reality? What is it that you believe about God, about love, about truth? This is the first step of the treatment, is to bring your mind to a place where you acknowledge that all is one. And so when I speak a spiritual mind treatment and I do this opening phase, I'll say something like, I recognize that there is only one life, that life is infinite, that life is all-loving, that life is interwoven and intermingling into every circumstance, into every situation, that it is living in every particle, participating in every life. What I know about God is that God is all that there is. And so once you bring yourself to this place of recognizing the allness of the one, the next logical step is, if God is all there is, guess what? Then you are one with it. And so that's the second phase. And so in acknowledging the allness and the oneness, remember that you are part of the whole. Remember that you are a manifestation of this one. And so when I arrive at this phase in my prayer, I might say something like, I remember that I am being breathed by the Spirit of the living God. I remember that I am the universe. I remember my interconnectedness with this one. And if I am part of this one, I can remember that every single living being, every person on this planet is part of that one unity. That I am that I am. That the I am that I am is the I am that you are, is the I am that we are all becoming. That Spirit is the life breath that is beating our hearts, breathing us, and looking through our eyes. And so take a breath for a moment. So we begin in the awareness of the all, of the one. And then we bring ourselves to the remembrance that we are one with that. Well, if God is all there is, and I am one with that one, then whatever I speak is God speaking. And so it's in this center place in our prayer that we speak an affirmation, that we speak the truth that we're seeking, that we speak into that which we are wanting to see as if it is already so. And so we speak about the healing that is emerging right now. We speak the truth, recognizing that the healing, that the wholeness, that the prosperity, that the opening of consciousness that is happening on planet Earth is part of this divine evolution. And so in the center of this prayer, I want you right now just to speak in your own mind or silently, just an affirmation of truth for yourself of what it is that you are seeking to see more of. And so we look to this place of recognizing the allness, the oneness of all things. We unify ourselves in that awareness, recognizing that we are one with it. And then recognizing that that which we speak is the word of God being spoken, is creation happening, is vibration being moved into the world. then the next logical step is to give thanks, to be grateful, to celebrate that this awareness is emerging right now, to celebrate the fact that that which you have spoken is acted upon by this great and glorious process that we call life. And remember that your brain cannot process fear or anxiety and gratitude at the same time. So whatever it is that you're praying for, whatever it is that might be on your mind, speak some kind of gratitude about what this could lead to, about what is happening right now, about what could be coming. And then once you're in a space where you can feel the gratitude of that, the last step is to let it go. To realize that if you are holding so tightly on to something, it can't go anywhere. And so finally we just get to that phase of release and letting go. And then we seal it all up with 4 words. And so it is. Right? Because if God is all there is and I am one with that and the word has been spoken and I am truly grateful and willing to let it go, how could it not return? Right? And so we have this beautiful process, and I highly recommend you participating in the Foundations class with Reverend Grace that's starting next week, because that whole class is about getting deeper into these spiritual practices, learning how to do spiritual mind treatment for yourself. This is a this is a process that allows us to observe and interact our thinking. Something's happening in my life. Something's happening in the world. Something's happening in my thinking. I need to walk myself through these steps of thought that allow me to arrive at a different place. Because if I can't see that it's all connected and that there's something deeper weaving its web through all of this, it's really easy to get stuck in the particulars. It's really easy to get lost in the pain. It's really easy to get hijacked by the fear. And this observe and interact concept, I think, is telling us that we need to continuously be looking at both. This is a practice of balance. We see what we don't want. We see what we don't like. This is how we hone our existence, right? Every time we make a choice, every time we look at something, every time we make a step forward, every time we stand for something, we are focusing what is showing up in our world, in our reality, and in our own life. But the process of attention is tricky because our minds want to go all over the place. I'm pretty ADD myself. I've been carrying around a diagnosis most of my life. And it's really easy for me to go from here to there, to this, to that, all over the place. And then the world just wants to throw all this stuff at us depending on how much you're paying attention. It's really easy to get distracted. Do you have a practice of every single day bringing yourself back to focus? Bringing yourself back to center? Bringing yourself back to that first awareness that there is only one thing happening here, and that one thing is spirit, that one thing is evolution, that one thing is life itself. And the more that we cultivate this kind of a spiritual awareness, the more that we walk through these 5 steps of spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer, this is like mental spiritual exercise. You know, when we do our chants or speak our affirmations and we do them in repetition, it's because that's what it takes to build the neural pathways to get it into your brain. You know, if you're not willing to repeat the words over and over and over again and bring them into your mind, it's like going to a gym and getting a physical trainer and saying, I only want to lift the weight once. I'm done. Right? If you want to change your body, you have to lift the weights multiple times in order to build the strength, in order to build the muscle memory, in order to get it into you and shift what's happening. And so processes like spiritual mind treatment, affirmation, meditation, think of these of like going to the spiritual gym. This is how you do your mental workout to hold your attention so that what if we all were so dedicated to our spiritual practice and we were lifting the weights of spiritual mind treatment, affirmation, and meditation so much that when anything comes at us, our mind automatically says, how is this God? How am I connected to this? As opposed to saying, they did that. Why are they doing that? Oh my goodness, spin around, get all fluffled, right? Which is so easy to do and probably a little bit more fun sometimes. But I think that the purpose of spiritual practice is to help us get to this place where the deeper awarenesses come to us more automatically. And that we have to spend less and less time redirecting our thinking and behavior because we've done the work ahead of time to help us focus where and what it is that we want to be seeing. Because if what we give our attention to is what's going to grow, then we want to be finding the way to put most of our attention on the solutions. Most of our attention into the possibilities, most of the attention and energy into those and that which is moving things in the direction of the dream, of the vision, of what's possible. And that doesn't mean ignore all the other stuff. It means observe it and then let the interaction be your practice. How you interact with that which you observe is everything, right? If we observe violence in the world and we do nothing, just observe it, we allow more violence to be. But if we observe a violent something or other, and then we interact in a way that is about intervening, that is about stopping it, that is about changing, that is about speaking up, that is about saying what's necessary, we've then shifted where the attention is. And that can shift what emerges after that. And so this whole year of our theme, our year of inner and outer permaculture, we're going to be using these principles. All of them, I think, are about this first one, about how we observe and interact, what we choose to observe, and how we choose to interact. And over the course of this year, we're going to be exploring many of these different principles, which are going to be asking us to look at how we observe and interact with diversity, how we observe and interact with our waste stream, how we observe and interact with the people around us, with the environment, with the land itself, with the rain. Do we continuously live in a practice that is perpetually moving us towards our ideals? Or are we a bit muddled and doing it sometimes? Because the human brain is totally capable of operating on autopilot. Who knows where that leads? Many of us do. Right? I think the world that we're living in is an example of a lot of unconscious choosing or lack of choosing that just allows all that is to grow up. But if you attend to a garden, you're not going to have the garden you want if you just say, everything is good, just grow. Because either you're going to get a lot of rocks or a lot of weeds or a lot of things crowding each other out, or you're going to observe and interact with that thing and make choices, have interactions, plant things that you want to see, remove things that you don't want to see, help build up the soil and work on what is invisible that needs to be there to support that which needs to grow. These principles are a powerful metaphor to allow us to look at our lives and begin to recognize that if we want to move into a thriving world, and if we each want to have thriving lives where we can live in the beauty and the value of our authenticity and our diversity and the magic that lives within us, that there's a lot of deep intentional work that needs to be done within the mind of each one of us, so that the little sphere that we create everywhere we go perpetually and more becomes a reflection of that which we are wanting to see. We can be the change makers. We can be the peacemakers. We can be the ones who bring about a world that works for all. But we have to start in our own minds and do the detangling of our thinking and find the practices that help us build the kind of mind that is going to see what needs to be seen. We can't just keep operating on default. It's not good. We have to awaken our minds. You know, one of our mission is to awaken humanity to its spiritual magnificence. Well, I think it takes some work. It might take some repetition. We might have to learn how to treat our mind as if it is malleable, because it is. And everything that we take in is creating a program that begins to run in our mind. And there's a lot of static that comes to us from the world of media, social media, all of the different ways that we let information come into our minds. And so let's be in the practice. Let's do it together. Okay? Take a deep breath. And let go. And as we breathe together, let us once again move through these 5 steps, recognizing first and foremost that there is only one, that one is the infinite, that one is God, that one is living and breathing everyone and everything, and so we unify ourselves in this awareness, recognizing that there is indeed only one of us here, and that each one of us is the I am that the I am is becoming right now. And as we accept that truth, we can then speak into this space that each one of us is waking up, that each one of us is dedicating even now a little deeper to that which is necessary, that each one of us is rising in possibility and awakening our minds to what is possible. And in that space, let us then move to gratitude, remembering that we can celebrate this life, we can celebrate this community, we can celebrate all that is emerging for each one of us, and remember that even though there is so much that looks like not what we want that is rising up in the world, simultaneously right next to it and underneath it, there is magnificent beauty and possibility that is beyond anything we could have imagined that is rising up as well. And in that knowing, let us then surrender. Let us let go just a little bit, knowing that for the current to carry us, we cannot cling to the shore. And so let us be in this together. And so it is. Thank you.